when a car driven by obsession came hurtling towards us. I was the idiot who took the hit to save my husband. I became the vegetable rotting in a hospital bed, while the driver turned out to be the one that got away. His precious high school sweetheart, the irony. My husband forgave her in court with tears in his eyes. Then turned around and pulled my plug. He didn't waste a second grieving. He married the bitch who killed me. Spent my money and filled my house with their bastard kids. Karma is a funny thing. I woke up right back in that moment before the impact this time. I didn't push him out of the way. I stood back and watched hell coming for him in my last life after I died. Mark knelt by my grave and wailed like a wounded animal. For a second I was naive enough to think he actually felt guilty. Then he opened his mouth. Thank you, Chloe. Thank you for getting hit by that car. Your sacrifice put my life back on track. Now I can finally be with my soulmate floating above my own tombstone. As a ghost I wanted to strangle the son of a bitch, but then I blinked. And the graveyard was gone. Chloe, hurry up, the movie starts in 10 minutes. My brain short-circuited for a few seconds. I looked around the intersection, the curb. I realized what was happening. I was back. I was reborn on the day the beetle turned me into a vegetable. Only this time I wasn't going to be the sacrificial lamb. I wasn't going to push Mark to safety. I wanted to see what happens when a famous choreographer gets his legs crushed. I wanted to see him bedridden, wiping his own ass, destroyed by his precious true love. Mark was standing there backlit by the sun, flashing those charming eyes and that $1 million smile. The same eyes that looked at me with love every day. I actually bought his bullshit. It wasn't until I was paralyzed in my last life that I saw the monster underneath. After draining my bank accounts for my medical care, he testified in court that I was the one jaywalking. He handed the judge a forgiveness letter on behalf of the family. Then he and the driver, Heather, the psycho ex-girlfriend he never got over, teamed up to pull my plug. Heather cried her crocodile tears, lost some weight and acted all depressed until Mark softened up. He married her and bought her a condo with my money. God, I was a joke years ago when Mark was a starving artist. Heather dumped him to bang some rich sugar daddy in Europe. I was the one eating instant noodles with him, building him up until he became Mark Evans, the hot-shot celebrity choreographer. I remember once I bought a Tom Ford lipstick for my birthday. He threw a fit right in front of the salesgirl. You're so wasteful, that's not how you build a future, he hissed. Shit, it wasn't about the money. He just didn't think I was worth it. If a man won't spend money on you, he doesn't love you, period. Chloe. Mark looked annoyed that I wasn't moving. Hello, I ignored him and scanned the road. There it was, the white VW Beetle speeding down the avenue. Like a missile, the Grim Reaper. Chloe, what are you spacing out for? Come on. Ah shit. Mark's impatience turned into a scream as the Beetle slammed into him. Crunch. Snap, the sound of tires grinding over bone. It was disgusting. It was violent, and honestly, it was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. Mark, in my last life, you thanked me for dying so you could find your true love, right? Well, I'm a giver. Let's see how much your true love sticks around when her car turns you into a cripple. Mark's legs were hamburger meat, worse than I imagined. The doctor was grim. Mrs. Evans, we have to amputate to save his life. Just like he signed my death warrant in the last life. I grabbed the pen. I signed the consent form with a shaky hand. Shaking from excitement, not fear. I grabbed the doctor's hand. Cut them, doc, cut them off. Take them from the hip if you have to, just save my husband. Mark was a big deal in the dance world. He had trophies, accolades, and an ego the size of Texas. Everyone said he was the next legend. He loved his legs more than he loved me. He used to use my expensive face masks on his knees. A dance superstar with no legs, that's a tragedy. Thinking about the despair waiting for him when he woke up, I almost smiled. This is what you owe me, asshole. 2 days later, Mark woke up. He tried to sit up, but his brain couldn't connect to his feet, because they weren't there. When I gently broke the news that I had authorized the amputation to save his miserable life, his eyes went bloodshot. He started shaking uncontrollably. Why, he rasped, why was it me who got hit? Honey, what are you talking about? I stared him dead in the eye. He looked panic-stricken, eyes darting around. Chloe, why did you stop walking at the intersection? Oh God, Mark, it's my fault. I started fake crying. Instantly I froze. I was so scared. If I hadn't frozen, I could have pushed you out of the way and your legs would still be. I trailed off sobbing. He couldn't really blame me for freezing in fear. He looked down at the empty space. under the blanket and fell into a black hole of depression. Don't worry darling, you'll get used to being half a man. Just like I got used to being a vegetable. Life as an amputee turned Mark into a monster, he screamed. Through vases refused to eat, he wouldn't see anyone but me. As the devoted wife. I played my part perfectly. I cooked his favorite overpriced steak. I burned my hand on purpose with the curling iron before bringing it to him. Babe, your hand. Mark looked at the blister. Touched. Why are you so clumsy? It doesn't hurt, I whispered bravely. As long as you eat something it's worth it. He ate the steak. Tears in his eyes. I didn't divorce him immediately for one reason. Assets. We co-owned a media agency. I put up the initial capital. I drank myself sick getting him his first gigs. I managed his talent. If I divorced him now, the court would split the assets. And I'd look like the heartless bitch leaving her crippled husband. The media would crucify me. No. I needed to destroy his reputation first, needed the company. While Mark rotted in the hospital. For 2 months I took over the business. One afternoon disaster struck, or rather she struck. The hospital door burst open and a woman threw herself onto Mark's bed. Wait on cue, Heather. The homewrecker. She ignored me completely and buried her face in Mark's chest. Mark, oh my God, Mark, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hit you, please don't sue me. Sob. Please. Mark froze. His instinct kicked in. Wifey, don't cry. Shoo. Excuse me, I said, voice ice cold. Heather looked up startled. Mark realized he slipped up. He panicked. I meant I was confused. Meds. He called her wifey because in the timeline he remembers. Or once they belonged together, he didn't know I knew everything. Mark. Heather sobbed. Ramping up the drama. Please don't press charges, I can't go to jail. Mark frowned. I didn't sue you. Of course he didn't. He was too busy mourning his legs. Sued her. I had the lawyers on her ass the second the ambulance left. Heather knew that. She came here to work her magic on Mark because she knew he was a sucker for her tears. In the last life she slept her way out of prison time. I figured she could do the same thing now. She was terrified I'd take Mark's money and leave her to rot. Mark, if you don't sue I'll pay damages. Heather whimpered. I laughed out loud. Miss Heather is willing to pay. Great, makes things easier. Mark looked torn. He wanted to protect her. I stared him down until he looked away. The coward. How much? Heather whispered. Not much, I said, checking my nails. My husband is a dancer. You crushed his livelihood. $1.8 million sounds fair, right? 1.88 million, Heather gasped. I've been living abroad. I don't have that kind of cash. Can I pay in installments? Like $500 a month. My mom is sick. $500, I scoffed. You're gonna pay me for the next 300 years. Are you high? I leaned in. Pay up in full or see you in court, honey. Heather did her little fainting act. She swayed like a flower in the wind. Mark snapped. Chloe. Stop being such a bitch. He glared at me. Can't you see she's struggling? Her family has no money. Drop the lawsuit. I'm not pursuing it. Wow. He calls me Chloe with venom. But treats this vehicular manslaughter Barbie like a princess. Heather always played the poverty card. She has a sick mom and a hard life. But always manages to date rich guys and wear designer knockoffs. She wanted the easy life. That's why she killed me last time, Mark. I said firmly. She turned you into a cripple. And you wanna let her walk because she cried a little. Get real, Mark. Heather wailed louder. Get out. I grabbed Heather by her arm. Not gently, and dragged her toward the door. Chloe, let her go, Mark screamed. But he couldn't do anything. He was a torso on a bed. He could only watch as I threw his true love into the hallway like a bag of trash. I didn't just throw Heather out, I made sure she had an audience. As I shoved her into the hallway, I spotted a nurse at the station and immediately switched gears. I slumped against the doorframe, covering my face with my hands, my shoulders shaking. I can't believe she would come here, I sobbed, loud enough for the floor to hear. After crippling him, asking for money? My poor husband. The nurses swarmed me like angry bees protecting their queen. By the time security escorted a screeching Heather out of the building, the narrative was set. I was the grieving, protective wife. Heather was the vulture. When I walked back into the room, Mark was staring at the ceiling. He looked smaller without his legs. Less like a god, more like a torso with a bad attitude. You didn't have to be so rough with her, he muttered, refusing to look at me. She's traumatized, Chloe. Traumatized? I walked to the sink and began peeling an orange. The citrus scent cut through the antiseptic gloom. Mark, she was going 60 in a 30 zone. You're missing the bottom half of your body. She's missing a monthly installment on her Audi. Pick a side. I'm on our side, he lied. I just think, maybe we settle. If we ruin her, she'll have nothing. How does that help me walk again? It doesn't, I said, handing him a slice of orange. But it pays for the custom wheelchair I ordered. And the ramps. And the nurses you'll need because I have a company to run. His jaw tightened. I don't need nurses. I have you. I'm the CEO, Mark. Remember? You're the talent. And right now, the talent is on indefinite leave. I saw the flicker of rage in his eyes, the same rage he showed the salesgirl over the lipstick. But he swallowed it. He needed me. He needed my money, my house, and my legs to fetch him water. Fine, he rasped. But don't bankrupt her. Please. We'll see. I left the hospital that night and made a call to a private investigator I'd hired in my previous life, back when I was a ghost watching Mark spend my money. His name was Miller. Expensive, sleazy, effective. I want everything on Heather Vance, I told him. Bank accounts, hidden assets, who she's sleeping with. Specifically, look for a Jean-Pierre in Zurich. In the last timeline, Heather had bragged about her Swiss sugar daddy at my funeral. I figured old habits died hard. Bringing Mark home 3 weeks later was a logistical nightmare that I savored every second of. I had forgotten to renovate the downstairs bathroom in time, meaning Mark had to use a commode in the living room for the first few days. It's humiliating, he hissed, trying to hoist himself from the wheelchair to the portable toilet while I sat on the sofa, typing on my laptop. It's temporary, babe, I said, not looking up. Contractors are booked solid. Just pretend you're camping. I can't lift myself. My upper body strength is gone from the bed rest. Help me. I looked at him. Really looked at him. In the other life, he had looked at my paralyzed body with disgust. He had wiped my drool with a rough paper towel and sighed like I was a burden. I can't, Mark. My back, I lied smoothly. Remember? I tweaked it carrying your trophies to the basement. You put my trophies in the basement? Well, you won't be needing them upstairs. Clutter, you know. He struggled, slipped, and fell onto the rug. He lay there, panting, a mix of sweat and fury. I waited a full 10 seconds, just enough to let the helplessness settle in his bones, before I called the male nurse, Igor, whom I had hired specifically because he had zero sense of humor and hands like sandpaper. Igor, Mr. Evans had a little accident. That night, I sat in my office and initiated phase 2. Mark was depressed, isolated, and desperate for validation. He was texting Heather. I knew because I had mirrored his phone to my iPad. Mark, it's hell here. She treats me like a child. Heather, oh baby, I'm so sorry. I miss you. I wish I could take care of you. Mark, I'm going to make her drop the lawsuit. Once I get access to the joint accounts, I'll send you cash. I smiled and took a sip of wine. Access to the joint accounts. That was cute. The next day, I walked into the living room where Mark was staring blankly at the TV. Mark, I've been thinking, I said, putting on my best overwhelmed wife face. I can't do this alone. The business is demanding, and Igor is expensive. Maybe you were right. His head snapped up. Right about what? About Heather. She owes us, right? Instead of money, maybe she pays in labor. She can come here, be your caregiver during the day. It would work off her debt, and you'd have a friend. Mark's eyes lit up like a Christmas tree. He tried to hide it, coughing into his fist. I mean, that's a bit unorthodox. Would you be comfortable with that? Anything for you, darling. Besides, it saves me $5,000 a month on nurses. I fired Igor. Heather moved in the next morning. She arrived with 2 suitcases, looking more like she was checking into the Four Seasons than starting a job as a home health aide. She wore a tight pastel romper that showed off her very functional legs. Chloe, she said, giving me a fake hug. I'm so grateful for this chance to make amends. I'm sure, I said. Here's the schedule. Catheter bag needs changing every 4 hours. Sponge bath at noon. Physical therapy stretches at 2, he screams during those, just ignore it. And he's on a strict low-sodium diet, so boil everything. Heather's smile faltered. Catheter? Unless you want urine on the Persian rugs. Have fun, kids. I grabbed my purse and left for the office. I didn't go to the office, though. I went to the spa. Then I sat in a cafe and watched the feed from the hidden cameras I'd installed in the living room. It took exactly 4 hours for the romance to die. On the screen, Heather was trying to lift Mark. She was weak, and she didn't want to break a nail. Ow! Heather, watch the stump. Mark yelled. I'm trying. You're too heavy, Mark. God, stop yelling at me. Well, don't drop me. Jesus, Chloe did this better. Then call Chloe. I sipped my latte. Perfection. While Heather played nurse, badly, I went to work on the finances. In the previous timeline, Mark had charmed the board of directors. He was the creative genius, I was just the money. This time, I called an emergency board meeting. Mark's recovery is not going well, I told them, projecting a sad, stoic demeanor. The trauma has affected his mind. He's making erratic financial decisions. He's trying to funnel company funds to the woman who ran him over. Gasps around the conference table. I slid a folder across the mahogany. Here are the logs. He's trying to liquidate assets to pay her legal fees. As the majority shareholder, I need to freeze his authority. For his own good. They voted unanimously. Mark Evans was stripped of his signing power. I was now the sole operator of Evans Media. I went home to find the house in chaos. Mark was in the wheelchair, looking pale. Heather was on the couch, scrolling on her phone, ignoring him. Honey, you're home. Mark sounded relieved. Heather, get up. I'm on my break, she snapped. Mark, I said, ignoring her. Bad news. The board found out about the lawsuit. They think you're a liability. They froze your accounts. What? Mark turned purple. You're the chairman. Unfreeze them. I can't. It's a conflict of interest. And, they're talking about a morality clause. If they find out you're harboring the woman who crushed your legs, they might void your payout entirely. Mark looked at Heather. For the first time, I saw genuine resentment. She wasn't a sexy forbidden fruit anymore. She was a liability. She was the reason he was broke. Heather, Mark said, his voice trembling. Did you buy takeout with my credit card? I was hungry. There's no food in this house. That card is linked to the business account. They're watching everything. God, you're so cheap now, Heather muttered, standing up. I'm going out. You can't go out. You have to help me into bed. Ask your wife, she slammed the door. 2 months later, the annual arts gala arrived. In my past life, Mark had gone alone because I was too sick, i.e., he was ashamed of me. This time, I insisted we go. It's good PR, Mark. Show them you're a survivor. I dressed him in a tuxedo that hung loose on his wasted frame. I wore a backless red dress that cost more than Heather's life. I looked dangerous. We arrived on the red carpet. The cameras flashed. I pushed his wheelchair, playing the doting wife. Then, the reporters started asking questions. Mark, is it true you're retiring? Mark, how do you feel about your wife taking over the company? Mark, is that the driver over there? I had invited Heather. I sent her a fake invitation pretending to be a talent scout, looking for fresh faces. She showed up in a knockoff Versace, looking desperate. I maneuvered Mark right next to her in front of the press. Oh look, Mark, I said loud enough for the microphones. It's Heather. Isn't it amazing that you've forgiven her? Tell the press how she's living with us. The reporters went feral. Living with you? The woman who cut off your legs. Is this a polyamorous thing? Mark stammered, sweat dripping down his forehead. No, she's a caregiver. It's strictly. It's a love story. I beamed, clutching Mark's shoulder hard. He just couldn't bear to see her go to jail. He's paying her debts. He's a saint. I looked at Heather. She was preening, thinking this was her moment. Actually, I added, my voice dropping an octave, we just found out Heather is pregnant. Isn't that right, Heather? Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. Heather's eyes widened. She wasn't pregnant. But the sugar daddy, in Zurich? The one my PI found out she was still seeing on weekends while Mark thought she was visiting her mom. I'm not, Heather stuttered. Oh, stop being shy, I said, pulling up a photo on my phone and accidentally turning the screen toward the paparazzi. It was a photo of Heather kissing a 60-year-old banker in a Swiss hotel lobby, taken 3 days ago. Is it Jean-Pierre's? Or Mark's? It's so modern. Mark looked at the photo. He looked at Heather. The realization hit him like the VW Beetle. While he was rotting in a wheelchair, defending her, fighting me for money to give her, she was hustling a geriatric banker in Europe. Heather. Mark whispered. You said you were at your mother's. Mark, listen. Mark screamed. It was a primal, animal sound. He lunged out of the chair, forgetting he had no legs, and flopped onto the red carpet in a heap of expensive fabric and shame. The cameras clicked furiously. I stood back, looking down at him. Oh dear, I said, not moving to help. Someone help him. I think he's having a breakdown. The fallout was nuclear. The press destroyed Mark. Cuckolded Cripple Harbor's abuser. His reputation as a serious artist was vaporized. Heather fled the gala and tried to leave the country, but my lawyers had flagged her flight risk status regarding the unpaid damages. She was arrested at JFK. Mark spent a week in a psychiatric hold. When he came home, he was a ghost. I sat in the living room, boxes packed. Where are you going? He asked, his voice hollow. Paris, I said. I sold the house. You, what? The house. It was in my name, remember? Bought it before we married. I sold it this morning. The new owners move in on Monday. You need to be out by noon. Chloe, please. I have nowhere to go. You have half the bank account. I tossed a check onto his lap. It was $4.12,000. 12,000. We had millions. I had millions. You spent your half on legal fees for Heather, the failed rehab center you invested in, and, oh yes, the $1.8 million I sued you for. You sued me. I sued the driver. Since you accepted liability on her behalf in writing, remember that forgiveness letter you signed, you assumed her debt. I garnished your share of the asset split. It's all legal. I walked over to him. I leaned down, smelling his fear. In the last life, I whispered, you pulled the plug because you wanted my money and her body. You didn't mourn me for a second. He stared at me, eyes wide, trembling. What are you talking about? Last life? Enjoy the instant noodles, Mark. I hear they're building character. I live in a villa in the south of France now. I dance every day. My legs are strong, tan, and beautiful. I check the news sometimes. Heather is serving 5 years for fraud and vehicular negligence. Her Swiss banker dropped her the second the scandal broke. Mark lives in a state-assisted ground-floor studio apartment. He tried to teach dance from his wheelchair, but nobody wanted to hire the guy who had a public meltdown on a red carpet. I hear he spends his days on internet forums, complaining about how women are snakes. Sometimes, when the wind blows through the vineyards, I think about that intersection. I think about the crunch of bone. And I smile. Karma isn't a bitch. She's a choreographer. And she just staged a masterpiece.